New details in the investigation into a deadly shooting rampage in San Bernardino, California. What we're learning about the suspects ahead.
And temperatures are on the chilly side out there for you today, but at least it's not raining or snowing. We're finally out of that. I'll tell you how long it lasts coming up.
And some people are forced from their homes by a fire at a Paris apartment complex. We'll have the details.
This is WKYT News at 4.
Welcome to WKYT News at 4. Jennifer has the afternoon off. Snowflakes made an appearance across the bluegrass last night, bringing in some colder temperatures. This is a live picture now of downtown Lexington, where you can see that the sun is shining out there, but don't be fooled, it is still chilly out there. Let's check in now with meteorologist Jim Caldwell. Hi, Jim.
And hello to you. And you're right, pretty chilly out there. It's not one of those days you want to just go running out with the short sleeves on again. So don't let that sunshine fool you. She's right. It's deceiving, but it still looks pretty good out there overall. We're looking at the live sky cam. We will now throw on those current conditions so you can see that we are at 42 degrees. Now, we're below seasonal values where we should be closer to the 50-degree mark, but 42 is where we stand. Feels like 42 as well. So a little bit of a chill in the air. We look all through the area, and you're even going to find some upper 30s trying to sneak in already with the folks there in Maysville, Moorhead coming in 38, 39 degrees. Somerset pretty close with that 41-degree reading. So the chill has built into the area, and it's going to hang out with us. Now, the clouds that we have out there right now, you can see some of those beginning to erode away, and they will continue to do so as we advance through the rest of the afternoon and into the evening hours. So overnight, when we get to our coldest point, we'll clear those skies up for you, and that means we get into some really chilly stuff yet again. No surprise, of course, but a little bit of a warm-up comes our way as we head into the weekend. That's a positive spin, and we'll track it coming up in just a few minutes.
Sounds good, Jim. Thank you. The FBI has now taken the lead in the investigation into the California shooting that left 14 people dead yesterday and 21 injured. We're learning more about one of the shooters, Syed Farouk, and whether radicalized beliefs contributed to his motives. Paul Verkaman is in San Bernardino with the latest. It's our top story at 4.
The FBI and other law enforcement officials are piecing together a profile of Syed Farouk, including who he'd been in touch with, where he traveled, and what may have prompted his actions.
If you look at the amount of obvious pre-planning that went in, the amount of armaments that he had, the weapons and the ammunition, there was obviously a mission here. We know that. We do not know why.
Farouk was a 28-year-old U.S. citizen with no criminal record and an employee of the county health department. He abruptly left a workplace holiday gathering Wednesday, reportedly angry, and came back with his 27-year-old wife, Tashfeen Malik, and started shooting. The couple was later killed in a shootout. 12 pipe bombs and more ammunition were found at their home.
Nobody just gets upset at a party, goes home and puts together that kind of an elaborate scheme or plan to come back and do that. So there was some planning that went into this.
After a meeting with his national security team this morning, President Obama said pinning down that precise motive will take some time.
There may be mixed motives involved in this, which makes the investigation more complicated.
U.S. officials say Farouk traveled to Saudi Arabia in 2013 for the Hajj, a common trip that would not have raised red flags. Law enforcement officials say Farouk had been in touch with more than one terrorist suspect on the FBI's radar, though not high priority, via phone and social media. In San Bernardino, California, I'm Paul Verkaman.
The ATF has determined the guns used in the shooting were purchased legally. Attorney General Loretta Lynch said this morning that such violence has no place in the U.S. An early morning fire has forced dozens of people out into the cold today. The fire destroyed a unit on the ground floor of the Rucker Village Apartments off 2nd Street in Paris and heavily damaged one above. No one was hurt. 7 other units in that building were undamaged. WKYT's Michelle Chamberlain has more now from Bourbon County.
I heard my buddy Jamie screaming, and I ran down the stairs, and his house was on fire.
Well, we went around to the windows, busting windows and everything, making sure we get everybody out.
That was Tammy Solanas, one of several people who live in this apartment complex. The fire heavily damaged her upstairs unit. Officials say she should be able to move back in a couple of weeks. Her niece, Nikki Edgington, lives downstairs, where officials believe the fire originated. Nikki was in the apartment at the time of the fire with her boyfriend and 2 young children. One neighbor just wanted to make sure the kids made it out okay.
Just the thought of, seeing the flames and not knowing if they're in there, that's what really caused me to try to help, and that's why I busted the window out to make sure they weren't in there.
But Nikki, who didn't want to be on camera, says there's only one way out of the apartment, the front door. She said she had to run through the fire with her 2 children to get them out alive. She's thankful they are safe, but says her apartment is destroyed. Now the Red Cross has told that family they have a place for them to stay for the next couple of days. However, the family's not sure where they will be staying during the holidays. In Paris, Michelle Chamberlain, WKYT.
Fire officials say they were able to rescue several animals. The cause of that fire is still unknown. We are working on a number of other stories for you on WKYT starting at 4:30. Sam Dick joins us now from the newsroom with a look at some of the news in progress. Hello, Sam.
Good afternoon, Amber. The Madison County Sheriff's Office is searching for a Christmas Grinch. A woman was caught on video stealing packages from a home on Park Drive. The camera not only shows the suspected thief, but also her getaway vehicle.
A red passenger car. It appeared like it was missing a hubcap or maybe had a spare tire on the vehicle.
The homeowner says the packages contain clothes to be given as gifts. We'll have more on the stolen packages and the investigation ahead on WKYT News at 5. Investigators want to know who stole dozens of road signs from 3 counties. The majority were taken from Menifee County, while the others were stolen from neighboring communities. Many of the signs were found dumped outside the 911 center. A road department employee says 55 of the signs came from major roads and highways in Menifee County. The other 37 are from Bath and Rowan counties. Costs about $10 to repair each broken sign. And not only is it an expensive problem, it's dangerous. First responders have already had a hard time responding to some calls.
Where there was a gentleman deer hunting and it had failed, and one of those signs was missing, and they had a difficulty time finding the road that he was on.
The road department says they think a group of youngsters who are out to play some sort of prank are responsible for all of this. We'll have more on the investigation ahead on WKYT News at 5:30. That's a look at some of the news in progress. Amber, back to you.
Sam, thank you. The Cats are on the West Coast tonight in Los Angeles. 2 programs that have won the most NCAA basketball titles square off in Pauley Pavilion for the first time. The Kentucky Wildcats will play at UCLA. Our Lee K. Howard is there now with a preview.
Kentucky and UCLA meet up here tonight in Los Angeles, and there's at least one Wildcat more excited than most to be here. Marcus Lee, who grew up in Antioch, California, about 6 hours north of here. He says when the schedule came out, this was the first game that he circled.
Oh, immediately. Once we played them last year, I was like, oh, we have to go there at some point. So once we finally put it out that I was going home, that was the first thing I put, and I tried to figure things out as quick as possible.
Although Lee chose to be a Kentucky Wildcat, he says UCLA was one of the schools he grew up dreaming to play for.
Oh, definitely. It's always a dream to think about in California, to think about those top teams, UCLA, Stanford, Cal, because those were always the teams that battled and everybody had that big hype up. So growing up, those were always the teams you wanted to go to as living in California.
While Lee knows the UCLA tradition quite well, others, like New Jersey native Isaiah Briscoe, are treating this just like any other game.
The only thing I know is that we're going to UCLA for a big road game. I don't know no history about UCLA. I don't know. I just play basketball.
This will be the 12th all-time meeting between these 2 blue bloods of college basketball, but it's the first ever here at historic Pauley Pavilion. In Los Angeles, Lee K. Howard, WKYT.
Lee K., thank you, and you can watch tonight's game at 9 on ESPN. What a new study is revealing about the rising cost of child care. We'll have more on that study coming up in Money Watch. And McDonald's is trying another tactic to lure in more customers. We'll have the details ahead for you on WKYT News at 4.